If the microphone doesn't work, then I think everybody gets to leave for free. Free pass out. Good morning, everybody. Sure appreciate you being here. For those maybe coming in, come on in. You are right on time. Always a good time to dig into the Word. And I appreciate that this is your priority this morning also, to want to be here looking into this. If you're joining us on the internet, we also welcome you. If you are a member here at Creve Hall, we certainly look forward to when we can all be back together in person. And if you're not, if you're visiting with us in person or online from somewhere else, then we are especially honored to have you with us today, and hope that we get to meet each other, and hope you leave here with some new friends. As we pick back up our discussion from last week on the idea of persecution of God's faithful, I want to just read one verse just to remind us of all that we've studied so far. Not going back into a lot of it because we've had great lessons, and especially from what Adam has showed us, things that we want to go back and refer to again and again. But I want to read simply one verse to remind us of this. 2 Timothy 3, verse 12. Indeed, all who desire to live a godly life in Christ Jesus will be persecuted. We will not escape it. We shouldn't expect to. As we'll look in coming weeks, not sure we should even want to. Although we don't have to go looking for punishment. We're going to talk about some of those things. I think Adam and I both will have some things to say about that, about realistically what should our approach be. And in fact, where we want to be in the next few weeks is looking at some things about what should I hope for and what should I not hope for. What ought I to pray for and what should I not pray for? And what should I do? How should I prepare myself? What should I make of whatever form and whatever degree of persecution may come my way? But I appreciate your being here with this discussion. Where we left it last week, having talked about some of those things, is looking kind of at a practical level. Where will persecution come from in our lives? What will be the sources of it, and why? And you might think, well, it doesn't really matter where it comes from, and it doesn't matter what the motives are for whoever may inflict persecution on our life. What matters is how we deal with it. But I think it does matter. I think it does matter to try to understand why would somebody do some of the things or say some of the things, etc. Because if we can understand a little bit about what may motivate somebody consciously or even subconsciously, that may tell us a lot about how we want to deal with that situation, because a lot of them are going to be different. It's a very different thing when one of your friends winds up persecuting you for your faith versus somebody you've never met who may be in a role of governmental authority over you. The effects on you may be similar, but how you deal with that, I think, is different. So I think it is important to look at. And so last week, we kind of put together just a quick working list of some of the sources that may lead to persecution in our lives, and then started going through them and just briefly saying, okay, why? Why would they want to make your life difficult just because you're trying to be faithful? Here are just a couple that we looked at. Number one was Satan himself, that he may directly inflict persecution on you. In fact, he will in many lives. Why? Take you away from God. What he always desires, to ruin your faith. And we didn't mention this last week, but do you remember one of Jesus' best known parables? You can call it the sower or the seed or the soil, whatever you want to call it. But do you remember the thorny soil, the seed that fell on thorny ground? And what was its fate? The seed took root and it sprang up into something good. And then the thorns, the cares and pleasures of the world choked it out to where it died and was left to nothing. This is exactly, as Jesus explained, what Satan wishes to do to your faith. If he can't prevent you from coming to a knowledge of the truth, which he'll try to do, if he can't try to stamp it out with no root so that it never really grows up and amounts to anything and dies very quickly, which he'll try to do. If he can't do that, if in fact you do start developing real faith with real root, real strength, then his next tactic is to try to bring difficulties, troubles, whatever, into your life to try to stamp it out and finally kill it. So number one was Satan. Number two was government, which has throughout history been one of the main sources of persecution of God's faithful people, both in Old Testament times and in the time of Christianity. Government, many times, government gone rogue anyway, desires power, just power, supremacy, control over your life. And when you believe in a God who created the entire universe and commands it and has everything under his control and offers promises, hope, and assurance that can never be shaken and can never be snatched away from you by any human, well, then you don't really live in fear of the emperor or the king or the dictator, do you? And they can't have that. You know, they can't have you living a life that's beyond fear of them. They can't have you living a life where they don't control every aspect of it. So government has traditionally been a big source of persecution. All right, the one that we got into third and where we kind of left in the middle was other individuals around you. Now, in a minute, I'm going to come back to how they may collectively act, but let's just talk about individual people around you. And we reviewed a little bit about why that is. And we're told very plainly, I mean, you could figure it out, but we're told. A lot of times it's jealousy. We're told very specifically that's why Cain murdered Abel. And we'll look at another verse in a minute, too, that explains his jealousy. Okay, there can be different reasons for jealousy, but we're told that's what it was. You have something that other people don't have, and you're trying to share it with them. That's the irony. You'd love to share with them what you have, this most precious thing in all of the universe. You have it by the grace of God. But instead of them saying, hey, tell me about it. How did you get that? How did you get this gift of eternal life? You know, can I get that? You would think that would be the response, but instead it's like, let's kill him. Okay, let's shut her up. Jealousy from other people. And the idea that we left off on was the fact that you are trying to live a faithful life and the fact that you have an assured future forever in heaven with God himself. Just that very fact, even if you didn't open your mouth, that's an indictment of guilt for people who are living in a very different way. You remember we looked at 1 Peter chapter 4. In the first few verses there, it talks about how the people of this world, people who are just chasing after pleasures of physical life, the flesh, he calls it, that they spend all of their time, and he said, and hey, many of you, before you became property of Jesus the Christ, that's what you did too. You spent your time drinking, wild parties, orgies, he says, debauchery, etc. And he urges us like, okay, you may have done that in the past. God forgave you of it. Now let's do better. Okay, enough of that. That's what he says. But he says that's what the world is still doing. The people around you, maybe the people that you used to do some of those things with, he says they are constantly jumping right back into that same cesspool of immoral behavior. And they cannot understand why you are not interested in that, why you are trying your best to avoid that. He said they don't get it. They truly don't understand, he says, and so they malign you. Instead of asking you, like, well, why does that not appeal to you? No, instead, again, it may just be lashing out at you, maligning you because you're interested in better and higher things than that. That's what Peter had to say about it. All right, let's look at a couple of verses here, but I want to start with one that Michael Kozine, he's probably right under my nose somewhere, and I'm probably looking right at him and not seeing him. But anyway, I appreciated some great input from several people after class last week, as we always do. But one passage Michael mentioned was Psalm 62. And I think it's worth a look. I enjoyed reading it this week. And as he said, and I had to agree because I read it out of several different translations at his urging, it probably makes the most sense. It probably comes through the clearest out of the New American Standard. And it gives a real accurate reading of this, of Psalm 62. I may not read the whole thing here, but here's the idea. This is a Psalm of David. And he's talking about how he just constantly is under the persecution and the evil intentions of evil living people around him. And several times in this, he comes back then almost like a chorus in what was probably a song to say, but God, I'm going to keep my hope in you. They can do what they want, but I'm going to keep my hope in you because you are my refuge and my only strength. Let me read at least part of it from New American Standard. My soul waits in silence for God only. From him is my salvation. He only is my rock and my salvation, my stronghold. I shall not be greatly shaken. By the way, do you notice he didn't say, I will not be shaken whatsoever? He's an honest man. I will not be greatly shaken. All right? That's a good goal. That's a good goal. It would be great to never be shaken whatsoever. But yeah, that doesn't always work, does it? You're not impervious to things. I will not be greatly shaken. Now he says to the wicked, how long will you assail a man that you may murder him? All of you, like a leaning wall or a tottering fence. That is something that's going to break at any moment. Something that's going to fall on you at any moment, a leaning wall. You're just waiting for bad to happen. That's what these people are like. They're going to do something bad at any moment, okay? They have counseled only to thrust him down from his high position. They want to take you down. They delight in falsehood. They bless with their mouth, but inwardly they curse. You know people like that? My soul, wait in silence for God only, for my hope is from him. He only is my rock and my salvation, my stronghold. I shall not be shaken. On God my salvation and my glory rest, that rock of my strength, my refuge is in God. Trust in him at all times, O people. Pour out your heart before him. God is a refuge for us. And now he goes back to the next verse. Men of low degree are only a vanity. So what does that mean? Just meaningless, a meaningless waste of time, that is vanity. So he goes, yeah, some men, they don't amount to anything. And men of rank, that is, people of high position, noteworthy in the world's eyes, men of rank are a lie. In the balance as they go up, they are together lighter than breath. What does he say? You can take everybody who's trying to destroy you, whether they're of high position or no position at all. You take every one of them together and put them on the scales. He said they don't even weigh as much as air. They are nothing compared to your God. Do not trust in oppression, verse 10, and do not vainly hope in robbery. If riches increase, do not set your heart upon them. And then he says again, the power belongs to God. And look at verse 12. Loving kindness is yours, O Lord, for you recompense a man according to his work. Which is another principle we want to keep in mind in everything. People can do what they want to you. God's not going to judge you and me based on what was done to us. We know from many, many, many scriptures, Old Testament and New Testament, God will look at me according to what I did with my knowledge of his words. He will judge me according to my work that I have done. And do not misunderstand, that does not mean for one second that my salvation is earned and based on my works. No. But he will judge me, my faith, by how I responded to his grace and what I did with that knowledge. So individuals will assail you. John 17:14, I'm not going to turn to that one right now just for sake of time, but Jesus there again says, as he does in so many words in many places, the world's going to hate you. In John 17, he's praying to his Father on the evening of the Last Supper. And he's praying to his Father, and he's praying for us. And he says, Father, the world's going to hate them because they're not of the world any more than I, Jesus, am of the world. And so the world's going to hate my followers for the very same reason they've hated me, Father. And he prays for our strength in that. Why do they hate you? You're not of the world, just like Jesus was not of the world. Okay? 2 Corinthians 2. And once again, I'm going to just remind, we've read it before, and in fact, we looked at this passage a few months back when Adam and I had the privilege of talking some about Christian influence, salt and light. And 2 Corinthians chapter 2 has a section in there that says that we, God's followers, are the aroma of Christ. We are the fragrance of Christ in this world. He says of Christ to God. That is, we are the representatives and the reminder of Jesus who leads to the Father. And for some people, that's a wonderful thing. He says for some people, for those who are trying to pursue God, those who are chasing after the Spirit and life, he says, then you, a fellow disciple, a faithful one, you are the sweetest aroma of life itself to them. But to those who are not pursuing God, who are simply pursuing fleshly life, etc., he says, your aroma, the aroma of Christ, to them it's the stench of death. Why? It's an indictment of guilt. The fact that you are living faithfully, that you are pursuing God, is a slap in the face and a huge reminder to everyone who has chosen just the opposite course, either intentionally or just by default and inaction. You, as a faithful disciple, you are a reminder to them that they are not in relationship with God, that they are not going to spend eternity with Him. And I don't mean because you told them that was the case. No. I just mean because you're following God, they see what that means. And some people say, I want that. And other people say, I want no part of that, and I'm going to make your life difficult any way I can because of it. 1 John 3:12, let's look at that one before we leave this little area and go on to another very important one, and one that I heard from several of you after class last week, and that like, hey, I think this is the big one. And I have to agree. We're coming to that in just a second. But on this one of other individuals persecuting you, 1 John 3 and verse 12, we should not be like Cain, who was of the evil one and murdered his brother. And why did he murder him? I'm reading from English Standard Version here, okay? And why did he murder him? Because his own deeds were evil and his brother's righteous. Do not be surprised, brothers, that the world hates you. We know that we have passed out of death unto life. And he goes on and then talks about our love for each other as well. Does that not just kind of sum up why some of the people around you can't stand you and will make your life difficult rather than come to God and clean up their own life? It's going to happen. I mean, you've had it happen before, I'm sure. I have no doubt you have. All right, what about the next one? And I'm going to lump several of these together, and you'll notice I'm going through the list that you gave me and a couple that I added in there of sources of persecution. The next one, and I'm going to kind of lump these together. There are individuals around you that we just talked about, and then sometimes those individuals come together into kind of organized groups. And I'm going to put together just the culture, including on social media. And we've got good people, and here's a good sister over here who makes sure that we use social media for good and positive and Christ-like things. And if you are on social media, here's should we call it a shameless plug? Okay, this is a good plug. If you are on social media, go and look at this congregation's webpage and all the other stuff that I never look at and haven't clicked on in many years, and some of them never. But if I did, I would go to the stuff, because Bill Watkins and Casey Jenkins and other people too put good things on there, and with a click of a button, you can share some of those. I mean, grow from them yourselves, and then think about sharing them if you have a page. Okay, but social media, for the most part, is not used to glorify Christ and to encourage his disciples. Okay, and the news media, I'm going to lump that in, and even more so the entertainment media and some of our moral superiors who maybe didn't finish high school but make $20 million a movie, etc. Okay, do I sound jealous? Probably so. Be nice, wouldn't it? Can you imagine if you got up in the morning and your job was to look good? You know, and you had all day long to go to the gym and go to the whatever and to the, et cetera, because that's your job, because you get paid $40 million a year to look good. Okay, maybe I am jealous, I don't know. I don't think I would like that life if I had it. Wouldn't mind trying it for a day or two anyway, or, just maybe one paycheck, just one. Anyway, but it seems like the entertainment media is constantly reminding us how backwards and stupid we are. And for some reason they feel like, we need to hear that from them to enrich our lives so that, we can know what to do. Okay, and there's actors and actresses that I've never even heard of. I have to go look up and find out who they are, but they're going to be my life coach. And among other things, they're going to let me know how stupid it is that I would follow the things in this book. The entertainment media, academia, ooh, big one. Even when I was in school, and that was, as you know, 400 years ago, but even then, I had a biochemistry professor at Emory, and in one of his lectures, he spent probably 40% of the class teaching biochemistry, that was good. I liked that. He spent an awful lot of it railing against Christians and conservatives and a couple of other groups that he didn't like much. And there was one day in class, he didn't hold up a Bible to my recollection, but he made very clear reference to it. And he says, and if you want to believe garbage like that book, then you really have no place here. And I'll just tell you, that got under my skin so badly. You can think that if you want, but, don't spend my time in biochemistry class telling me that. And I actually went and had a very, very respectful, and I was afraid too. I'll tell you, it was a fearful conversation with the chemistry department chairman about that, who was probably an atheist himself, but he agreed that really had no place in the classroom. I didn't know if that was going to be the end of my career the day I walked in to tell him about that. I figured it was going to be the end of my grade in that course, probably for sure. I don't know if he ever told the professor in question who came to him or not. But the chairman assured me that day, he said, "Thank you for bringing this to my attention." He said, "You will not hear any further criticisms of any such nature in the rest of that course, I can assure you." And there weren't. It was a great course from then on. And I actually still scored pretty good grade, probably better than I deserved. But it was just like somebody slapping you in the face back and forth. And that's what we get, isn't it? From academia, from the culture, from the entertainment media, the news media. And why? Now, part of it is because they are made up of the same individuals we were talking about just a moment ago. And it's so refreshing when you see maybe a celebrity who does stand up for what they believe. I mean, doesn't that just warm your heart? Doesn't it give you a little bit of hope if you see somebody who maybe lives in Hollywood, etc., and they believe, and they'll say so, Even when they get smacked down for it, they'll still say so. I admire that. I may not agree exactly with their beliefs, but I admire that. When you have somebody in academics who says, you know what, I've looked at the evidence and no, I think it points to there is a creator. Don't you love that? It's just refreshing instead of a constant smackdown. But why did they do it? Why do they do it? Here's my theory, partly just because of the reasons as individuals we said a while ago, but I think as a whole, and you want to think, why do they push some of these agendas that God says are not morally acceptable, but it's like they can't push it hard enough. They can't cram it down your throat enough to suit them. Why? I think it's because, whether consciously or subconsciously, now you may have a different opinion here, but I think they're trying to erase all moral rules, to erase all moral responsibility, to make all moral belief irrelevant, so to speak. Because then their conscience will no longer be bothered by the things that they choose to do. Okay? Because if everything's okay and there are no moral rules of any type, well then they don't have anything to feel guilty about, do they? That's my theory. What do you think, though? And listen, and some of them, let me just say this, in fairness, some of them have been inundated with this idea to the point that they truly believe that there is no God. They truly believe that. It's not just they want to believe it, they do. Okay? So let me in all fairness say that. And I guess if you truly believe that there is no God, then I guess, it probably bothers you when people give allegiance to him and try to live for him and even try to reverently, gratefully follow his rules. But I don't know. What do you think? You see it coming at you like crazy. And I think you're about to see it even worse. Let me come back to that in just one second. Any other thoughts on why the culture, the entertainment media, the news media, academia, why they all seem to be so united for the most part? I won't say unanimous because, like I said, there are these refreshing exceptions now and then of people who are brave enough to say, and then usually they get attacked. You hear the word, cancel culture. They usually get attacked and people howl. This man must never work again because he said this, because he refused to endorse this. So therefore, he must never be allowed in our culture again. Okay, and they usually come back then groveling and like, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I stood up for what the Bible said. I didn't mean to. But sometimes they stand firm. It's not unanimous, but why do they do it? Why do you think? That could mean that maybe my one sentence nailed it so completely that was the perfect explanation. I doubt it. Come on, somebody. Anything else other than the reason that I tossed out? Casey. Okay. What Casey said was we have to remember that our war is not with flesh and blood, straight out of Scripture. Okay? Sometimes they're not fighting for themselves. They're puppets on a string, aren't they? Being manipulated, sometimes by their own choice, by the one who lives eternally to destroy your faith and your soul. Yeah, and our war is not with these people, and in fact, we should never attack these people. Some of them are malicious. A lot of them have just been duped. Like I said, they really believe there's no God, etc., etc. And they're not really who our war is with. They're pawns in the game. Yeah, thank you, Casey. Terry and then Debbie. What Terry said is what we're really seeing, it's just at its root a rebellion against God himself. The behavior that we see and what they try to do to us, that's just a symptom of it. The real thing is a rebellion against God himself. And I think that's a very complementary idea with what I said a moment ago. Yeah, it is a rebellion against him and against anybody who would espouse his teachings and all that goes with it. Thank you, Terry and Debbie. Yes, okay. Yes, it does. Thank you, Debbie. Let me see if I can crystallize that for the internet audience and the others who would not have heard that directly. She said the thing, and this it actually goes very much along with what Casey said too, I think. These people are not acting on their own. They are minions, so to speak, and I don't mean cute little Disney characters. I mean what the word actually means, the way you used it. They are pawns in the devil's. They are foot soldiers in the devil's game. They may or may not even know that, okay? Because she pointed out something, and it also comes straight from Scripture. The whole world is under, except for Christ's faithful, in general, the whole world is under the control of the evil ones. 1 John 5, okay? Now, that doesn't mean he controls you. Jesus said, oh, no. John 16:33, I think, he said, oh, you're going to have trouble in this world, but don't fear because I have overcome the world. But 1 John 5 tells us that in general, the whole world is under the control of the evil one. And so these people are just his foot soldiers. They are his minions. And they are trying to normalize this behavior, and that's kind of what I was saying a moment ago, so that it will no longer prick their conscience when they do these things, when they do anything. So let's eliminate God and all of his rules, and then I will have nothing to feel guilty about. I can do whatever I want. I will be supreme. Whatever I feel like doing will be right, because we'll just get rid of that pesky God thing. And or it's okay if you want to believe he exists, as long as you don't think this book is real. Oh, much less try to live by it and share it with others. See, that's where the real problem becomes, isn't it? Because you can believe what you want as long as you don't present any kind of a truth that might offend their conscience. Thank you for all of those comments. I think they're all right on the mark. Any other ideas on that? Well, let me tell you, and I don't think I'm telling you anything that has not occurred to you already. I think it's about to get worse in this country, I suspect. Now, let me be really, really careful here, because I do not want to talk politics, not in the least, not in this class or any class or discussion in the church. There's time for political discussions if you're interested in them, and that's fine, but this is not it. So I want to just be clear. I am not making any political implications or allusions, okay? But there are some things that sometimes kind of occur in parallel. Take a look at what is happening already in much of Europe, even in Canada now, a lot of other countries. It's no longer just that Christians are laughed at and considered stupid. Now things are being labeled as hate speech, punishable by law if you utter things that offend people, things that are hurtful to people, okay? Like a lot of things in here. Hate speech. Not joking, folks, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm not making it up. It's happening. That people are actually, even in free countries, I don't mean dictatorships where we know people disappear and are never seen again, or they get sent off, to somewhere in Siberia or close to it to get re-educated. I mean free countries, where you're no longer allowed by law to say things that are straight off of these pages if they offend somebody. And they will offend somebody. Jesus said that. John 6, many people turned away from him one day because they got offended at his words, and he finally turned to his disciples and said, "Are you guys going to leave too?" In fact, do you remember that's when Peter said that beautiful thing, "Lord, where would we go? Who would we go to if we left you?" He said, "We have come to believe and to know that you are the Son of God, and that only you have the words of eternal life." But boy, his words offended some people that day. In fact, there was one week and one day his words offended so many people, they killed him. So yeah, his words are going to offend people just like he said. And I think it's maybe coming our way. So you see it happening in other countries. I mean, free countries. And you also see in this country a lot of people who are trying very hard to do away with laws that protect religious freedom. And so now what they would like to make it, again, folks, I'm not exaggerating, I'm not making it up. What they want to change that into is, well, yeah, of course you have the freedom to practice your religious beliefs, as long as they don't violate any of our laws about diversity and equality and dignity and, et cetera. You get it? Yeah, you can believe what you want as long as you don't disagree with what we're telling you is that's going to be the belief. That attempt is underway. Bad things are happening. So keep your eyes open. And I think in this country where you're still allowed to voice opinions, yeah, you may get fired. You may lose your book contract. You may never ever work again. Now, yeah, I can't promise that, but you can voice your opinion still, and you should. And sometimes I think it's very appropriate for you in the right, respectful way to voice your opinion to people who are making those laws. Because I think things are about to change. Randy. Yeah. Thank you, Randy. Yeah. What Randy said is Satan and the world have done a very effective job at rewriting the rules and changing the definition, especially of love. And I often in some of my classes have put up an equation with an equal with a slash through it, which means does not equal. Okay, respect does not equal agreement, but we've been told that it does. And same thing, love does not equal agreement, but we've been told that it does, and they've done a very effective job at redefining this. So what Randy said was, the first step was, if you disagree with me, you hate me. Why do you hate me? It's like, no, I don't hate you, I just disagree. And I'm telling you that is not consistent with the Bible. You bigoted hater, why do you hate so much? Okay, but what Randy said then is that was the first step, and that one has become very pervasive. If you disagree with anything I do, you're either a hater, a bigot, narrow-minded, judgmental. But the next step is not only do you have to accept whatever I want to do, now you have to support it. Now you have to stand up for my right to and celebrate it. whatever I call love and whatever I want to do, now, first you were a bigot and a hater if you disagreed with it or said anything about it. Now you're a hater and you deserve to be taken out back and beaten to a pulp if you don't stand up and celebrate whatever I want to do. Spot on, brother. Isn't that right? And I think the reason stems back to this. Let's erase all of God's rules so that I'll never have to feel guilty again. Okay? And if you dare to speak them, you better only do it in the confines of a church building where only those people who wanted to come hear them will ever be subjected to them. If you say them anywhere else, maybe hate speech. Because before long, folks, we may find ourselves that it's not just Canada anymore, and it's not just Europe, and it's not just Scandinavia, et cetera. Maybe come into your backyard too. Again, let me really, really emphasize, I do not want to be political, but you got to be prepared for that, and I think we need to be rehearsing how we're going to deal with that, and those are things that we're coming to. Randy. Yeah. Randy repeated something. He said he believed that Dan Winkler may have been the one who he heard this from. Yeah, thoughts to ponder. Yeah, the fact that Christianity in particular is being so viciously attacked maybe tells us, yeah, it's true, okay? And that's not your only proof for it. But I would say, too, Christianity steps on some real toes, doesn't it? And that brings attacks. I've heard Bill say from here regarding atheists, why would an atheist get so furious because you believe in something that doesn't exist? No, he does exist. God's teachings are real. That's why they elicit such vicious attacks. If everybody knew God was a myth and this was all made up, there'd be no need to attack it at all, would there? So it really kind of confirms, and it confirms everything Jesus said about why the world would hate you. Let me just close this part of our discussion with this. He didn't, I don't know that it was Aristotle. I don't know that he meant this in a religious context, but it certainly applies too. But he said, to avoid criticism, you will have to do nothing, say nothing, and be nothing. It applies directly to your faith as well. If you want to avoid persecution, you'll have to do nothing, say nothing, and be nothing. Is that an option? Thanks for being here, folks. I know we need to clear the auditorium. Hope you have a great week ahead.